Hi, Jess. Thank you for coming onto this podcast. And yeah, we're here today because we've worked together for we worked together for 3 months. We've done the 3 month program together, and yeah, I think what we noticed was that was a really big transformation for you, and we thought it would be a really good idea to. My intention really about this interview is really helping other people, especially people in leadership. And you came through neurodirections and you came through using access to work, didn't you? So do you want to just say a little bit about how you found the, the somatic coaching in terms of like how did you find it and what was your path to getting here in the first place?
Hi, Francesca. Yes, lovely to catch up again, and more than happy to kind of encourage as many people as possible to involved with this type of coaching. Really, it was something that I found my way towards after feeling a little bit lost, I guess, both professionally and personally, just in everyday life. I didn't really have much differentiation between the person I left in work and the person who I became when I was at home, and that's kind of what I was really struggling with a lot. So I recognised that there needed to be a change or something different, something within myself that I needed to explore further to kind of take some changes into my personal life more than anything really, but also show up as a more authentic me. I was tired and fed up really of being or feeling that I was performing as somebody else, and wanting to tap into my authentic self really. So access to work was the path that I took to find a coach, not necessarily expecting what that would look like or having any kind of idea of what the shape or the form of that would take. But after some soul searching, a lot of time spent researching, that was when I came across yourself and everything that I'd read on your website and in your bio and everything around your introduction just felt very natural and very organic for me. There was nothing that kind of really was off-putting for me. It was very different to anything that I'd ever experienced before or anything that I'd wanted to lean into. But wanting to challenge myself and recognizing that that maybe was the different approach that I needed to take, that was why I'd kind of explored that relationship further.
I was going to ask you because you're a team leader. What Yeah, I mean, you said a lot there about, so many areas of your life, and one of the areas that we explored was what it was like to be a team leader. What were the pressures or challenges that you were, I would say, probably quite quietly carrying at the time when we started? Do you remember?
I think at the time it was very much feeling out of place with the type of management that I was giving and the type of management that I was almost expected to be. It was almost that I was either too much as a manager or not enough, which is very true in a lot of aspects of my life, really. But feeling that, in some circumstances, I was considered overly compassionate or overly empathetic in some instances, which didn't fit policy and process. But then in other cases, actually, sticking to the rule book and kind of following things to the letter that didn't that meant that I wasn't pleasing everybody all at the same time, which was quite uncomfortable for me, not being able to give everybody the comfortable working environment that they want and that they deserve, but equally feeling that I didn't necessarily have that environment to be able to thrive either from the teams that I was managed by.
And for someone new to somatic coaching, how would you describe somatic coaching, like in your own words, and how that kind of impacted your way of leading your team, for example?
So the way that I would describe that is making a very tangible link between the head and the thought processes and actually how that is felt in your physicality. So those responses that you naturally have in terms of things like frustration or overwhelm or feeling upset, I think we give those feelings a name because that's what we think it feels like or that's what we think it should be. But actually when you hold space for yourself and sit with that feeling. What somatic coaching allowed me to do was really, for the first time, actually give myself space to sit with that feeling and really embody it and understand where in my body that applied pressure and what allowing that pressure to grow and to show up meant for me. And kind of in response to that, what my not coping mechanisms is a very negative term, I think, but actually what my what my body needs from me to be able to overcome that feeling or support myself through that feeling to come out of the other side. And for me, how that's kind of showed up in the workplace is, again, building on the empathy that I felt that I already had for people, kind of building on understanding the physical responses that others demonstrate in front of me in terms of their behaviours, their characteristics, their body language, but also actually taking a moment for me, recognizing in that moment if I'm having a tense conversation with somebody or something's maybe not gone the way that I'd hoped, that what's now switched for me is that I recognize the physical feeling of that emotion far before I can put a name to it, but also instead of persistently pushing myself through that feeling, it's almost a little flag that pops up to say, no, hang on, you're feeling this in your body, you need to take a moment. So it's been a very, not even a slow process for me. It was quite quick how I'd adjusted to the coaching style, almost immediate actually. So it was recognised within myself that I definitely needed that.
Yeah, I think what you're describing, because a lot of this focus is around emotional regulation, and it's something that we've talked about a lot. It isn't currently in the education system, and so it's about, for most of us, whether we're neurotypical, neurodivergent, we're highly sensitive, we can feel frightened of feeling the emotion, and so we disassociate with that, and we distract ourselves, or we implement other, you said coping mechanisms, and they're a way for the body and the nervous system and the psyche to to get through life, right? So they're not bad, but what you're describing is you are now more able to be with what comes up rather than being frightened of it or distracting yourself. You're able to be with something and then respond, because I think a lot of us, we've been caught in reactivity, just bouncing around, especially if the mind is very, very highly sensitive, or we have with ADHD we talk a lot about rejection sensitivity, dysphoria, etc. So is being able to be more, like you said, embodied, being in the body and being with. And we did that through co-regulation, and then you very quickly learn how to do that, how to self-regulate. Amazing. Was there a moment when something really clicked for you and you realized this work was different? Can you remember? I'm curious.
There's quite a few occasions where that happened, to be honest. A lot of light bulb moments or moments in the sessions where I sit back and think, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And to be honest, I could probably say that in every session that we had. So whether it was kind of the early kind of setup stage of the sessions, getting used to each other, kind of building that relationship a little bit. And we did more of that. I mean, it's not therapy, it's a bit more of that kind of therapeutic conversation in terms of tapping into my younger self, understanding my lived experiences as a young adult and as a child, kind of how that lent into my experience in everyday adult life. And there was several moments in those sessions where you talk about it a lot in terms of the universe mirrors back to you some of your earlier experiences and lessons that it wants you to learn, and I can really see how a lot of my younger experiences have kind of played out in these sessions. And yeah, what's the biggest reflection or the biggest takeaway? I think for me, it was that actual permission for myself to hold that space for myself, recognizing that I needed that, and that's what I was wanting, and that's desperately what I was seeking from coaching, whatever form that took. But it was the moment where that actually first happened during one of the sessions, where I'd felt the physical responses in my body from having had quite a frustrating and challenging week, and just to sit and be with it and experience that and allow it to show up for what it was, without me questioning it, without me squashing it or putting it to the side, without prioritizing other people. It was an acceptance moment for me that I do deserve to feel the way that I'm feeling right now, and I do deserve to have that space held for me.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love that. I think so many people who are in leadership, we're natural givers, aren't we? And so I really love that what you said about realizing that you deserve to have that space where you're supported, especially when you're holding a team, and the family, how would you say now this work has influenced the way that you show up as a leader, and how I'm curious how your team responds to you now, given that this work that you've done?
I think for me, physically, it's given me a sort of placidness that I don't know whether other people can perceive that or kind of even see that happening now, but it's almost a calmness within my own nervous system that I carry into every situation now, every conversation, every meeting, every team setting. I don't feel that I'm going into those situations dysregulated or nervous or anxious, or it feels that I'm carrying a confidence, a lack of anxiety, a placidness, as I said, into that allows me to show up more authentically. I've definitely felt that way in more recent settings. I'm even the way that I'm communicating with people, I don't feel that I'm performative, or I'm not noticing a feeling of performance. So yeah, that authenticity that I can take into those environments has definitely improved for me. And then even on a one-to-one basis, I've spoken earlier about compassion and empathy for people, and that's something that's deeply rooted in me as a human, and I will carry that in every environment, every setting that I go into. But actually recognizing that there's nothing wrong with being like that. There's nothing, I can't be too empathetic, I can't be too compassionate. It has its place, and showing up for people in the way that they deserve, very much in the way that you showed up for me in the way that I deserved, I think has just, yeah, it's allowed me to recognize that this is bigger than me. It's bigger than all of us. It's something that we should carry for each other, and kindness and empathy goes a long way. So I hope that the team that I manage I've felt that I've emulated that in the way that I work with them now.
About, if it's like, what I hear is like you're more present, because the thing where you talked about, I go in, you use the word placidity, but like that calmness, that to me, that's like the presence. You're more present and less bracing, because a lot of us, we have these old narratives, these old stories in our mind. And so if we go into a meeting, we go into something, we might preempt in our mind what the response is going to be, especially when we're leading. And what I'm hearing is you really embrace your authentic self, and you're present. So you're not embracing like in the brace internal brace mode. And I feel like that holds a lot of weight. People feel psychologically safe in response to that. I'm curious, when so going from there, how, so sort of life beyond work, how do you feel it's maybe, or if you noticed any changes in your relationships, your personal life, as you began to shift sort of internally?
Again, that's been quite a tangible difference for me. I've noticed a lot of things in my personal relationships with friends, with family, I'm a parent, so with my young children as well. The way that I'm able to show up for them you're exactly right. What you said there about that presence, feeling and being present in the moment. It's almost like a cloud has moved from across the front of my brain, and I can actually, I can focus, I can concentrate, I can have meaningful conversations and relationships with people without being clouded, without prejudging myself or preconceiving how I'm going to respond in that moment. And that was something, misconceptions or preconceptions about me and people's perspectives of me was something that I carried a lot throughout these sessions and something that I was very mindful of, always worried about what's this person thinking of me? How do they, how will they respond to me? How will they receive whatever it is that I'm, communicating with them? And, it's not entirely silenced that, but it's retuned it, it's refocused it. So it's not a self-deprecating version of that now. It's more of it's channeling the right sort of energy to be able to communicate more effectively in those settings. So that's massively impacted my relationships personally. I, in one of the sessions, another light bulb moment for me was that I'd spoken about not feeling at all times that I was a great friend, or not feeling that I showed up for my friends in the way that I think that they show up for me. And you'd ask me what more could have been done in that situation. If it was the other way around, what else could have been, what would you expect from your friend? And actually, I couldn't articulate anything that I would have wanted more from my friend if the roles were reversed. So it's made me reflect on my expectations that I have of myself, but also my own perception of myself in those situations. That it's made me feel more whole in my relationships, more available, more present, more enough, which is huge.
Yeah, it is. It makes me feel emotional. Beautiful. It's that self-acceptance, that that to silence, to at least turn down the volume of self-judgment. We talked a lot about self-compassion, and it's a with so many people say you need to be kinder to yourself, and what they don't know then is how to actually do that. How do you love yourself? And that's what we worked on. It's the how to, it's the step by step. This is what you do. You start to question, and you start to tune into sensation, and you start to reflect, like, how would I speak to my friend in this situation? And that's the shift as well that you're talking about. As you are judging yourself less, you're not preempting and imagining other people to be judging you. So you're energetically going into an environment in a totally different way. Our energy, our presence announces ourselves as before we speak. And that's what I'm hearing as well. Beautiful. It's huge. I'm so glad that we got to have this conversation. Yeah, I guess growth and this kind of idea, the theme of growth and possibility. How has this work changed your relationship with your ambitions and what you now believe is possible for your work and your life going forward? Be curious a bit about that.
So I think in the latter half of the session, so we were working together obviously for the 3 month period, and certainly in the second half, that was when it shifted for me from being less about emotional regulation and kind of tuning into that within myself, and more about where can I go now? What is my potential? What have I within my gift to be able to go and do? And what I'd learned through the work we've done together is, to some extent, that's actually quite limitless. If I don't set almost invisible walls and invisible boundaries around me, actually, what could I go on to achieve? And I don't think I'd realised quite how much. I mean, I've always known I was a very passionate person, but I don't think I knew how to tune into that properly, or not in the way that meant that I could make the difference I've always wanted to make, or show up for people in the way that they need. So I've really reflected on what is it that I want from life, what is it that is most important to me, that I hold dearest to me, and really focusing on, you know, the structure that I've got around me, the support that I have around me, family, friends, etc. Really addressing what is it that feels important to me, and then recognizing where am I not able, or where previously have I not been able to pour enough into those cups to fill my life, to to make me more fortunate in those ways. And a lot of that was because I was overcompensating to some extent in a professional capacity, delivering things, meeting expectations that weren't at a level that was realistic for me or for anybody. But pushing myself to meet those things in one way meant that it was having a detriment to some of those more personal things that I wanted to focus on. So it's shifted the dial on that massively for me. It's meant that I can really hone in on from a personal perspective, what do I want from life? What's important to me? What do I value? And really tune into where my passions lie and explore, the gift, the skill set that I've got, the mindset that I've got, all of the different, wonderful neurological differences, and how that can allow me to excel in some of these areas that others may not be gifted to do so. It's set, as I say, my potential, or my own perspective of my own potential, has massively shifted, and I can now really see what I can go on to become. But it's almost limitless. It is. So I can see myself going on to do all these wonderful things, and I've set wheels in motion to get me to that point already. I'm working on a lot of behind the scenes kind of projects to get me to that point now. But it's not, once I've got to that point, that's one and done. It's almost okay, that's step one, and then step two might be something further, something more advanced, something else, something different. It's taught me a lot that I don't have to doubt what my dreams are, and that I'm allowed to have dreams, and that they're actually quite achievable as well. There's nothing, that I want to set out and do that's beyond my reach. I just need to hold that space for myself in terms of that compassion, and kind of support myself through that process, but equally believe in myself. And it has given me that self-belief massively.
I'm looking, so looking back, what feels like the most powerful part of this journey for you?
I think, something I said earlier around that permission to have that space held, and making sure that I do that for myself. So it probably is the physicality actually between the nervous system. So again, recognizing what the brain thinks and feels, and then where that physically lands within my body. And that was the catalyst for everything else that followed, really. Recognizing that my body's responding in the way that it is because it needs something. It needs to have somebody sit with it, or, it needs for that feeling to be felt. That's opened up so many other avenues for me to then explore my own identity and lean into pockets of my personality and my authenticity that I'd otherwise left ignored. So I do think that's probably been the most powerful part, is very early on allowing myself to engage with that process as well. As I said, coming into this process, everything that I'd read about you and the way that you coach and your experience, etc., was very different to anything that I ever thought that I would like to engage with, or really anything that I ever knew about. So wanting to make quite a drastic change and giving myself permission to lean into that.
Yeah, and that was for me the whole way from day one, from when we had the assessment call. I I am so impressed by that from you, because it is different, this work, and it requires remarkable people, in my mind, to me, because you have to want to do the thing that society's kind of taught us to do the opposite. Like, oh, well, avoid feeling sad, avoid feeling frustrated, avoid feeling angry, go and do something else. And we're saying, right, sit with it, be with it, and beyond even the psychoeducation and trauma and mental health side, holistically, spiritually, like, who am I and what is all this all about? And I've always been impressed, as I've said to you time and time again, that you engage. That was the thing. That's the hallmark of someone who wants transformation, of someone who wants to go beyond just talking. And that's, to me, that's why this has been such a big transformation in these 3 months. What would you say to someone who feels stuck, but maybe unsure about this kind of work?
I've had that conversation a lot actually since we've been on this journey, both before we'd finished and also since kind of my sessions have come to an end. And I use the word transformational a lot, and it's not in a, I'm here to sell you something kind of way, but in a very like, I feel that within my soul, it's been massively transformational for me. So, but I also believe that it's important to be in the right headspace at the time that you're seeking this kind of help, this kind of support, this kind of, this type of journey, because, at the time that we engaged, I'd spent months looking for the right person, the right coach, somebody that felt right for me, because I'd come out of a very dark place. And had we have, engaged a few months earlier, or had it been with, a different coach or a different coaching style, I know I wouldn't have got as much out of this as we have, because I wouldn't have been able to show up for myself in the way that I have done. So it is very much about, timing it right and feeling, working through challenging times. I felt isn't the time to approach something like this. But what it will do when you're in the right headspace to start a journey like this is either prevent you from getting to that point again, or if you do, which I'm yet to experience, but if you do, then it will equip you with the tools to better support yourself and to enable others around you in your support network to support you in a more proactive way as well. But you definitely have to be in the right place.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. It's you have to be in a place where you're done. You're done with your story. You're done with people often go on a journey. It's not, I'm a trauma and mental health practitioner, so I'm trauma informed, but it's not therapy. This work is about going beyond talking therapy, beyond narrative as well. And you're right, you have to be in the right space, but that doesn't mean perfect. It doesn't mean you have to be, but you have to, I'm trying to think of another way to put it, but you have to want to engage, and you have to want change. Mm-hmm. If you're still stuck in the idea of you need fixing yourself, and I can say that from personal experience from 20 years ago, that's where I used to be, then it's not going to work. You have to be at that place where you're like, right, I've done all of these things, and talking therapy has its place. I never have anything negative to say about that in CBT, but it's not for everyone. But this type of work, you're right, you have to be ready to engage, and you have to be ready to go beyond limiting beliefs and story. And the research has proven that it is not just through talking, it is through the body. And that's where the somatic work, it can also be an amazing foundation for people. I sometimes say to people, this work can be great to do alongside therapy, so you can have a really good therapist and then do this work alongside, and it can be really impactful. So if we were to finish, if you were to describe this work in just a few words to finish, how would you describe it?
I think I've used a couple of these already, but transformational definitely is the biggest word that I've used in a lot of conversations that I've had about this work that we've done. Enabling as well, enabling me to show up as I am, to be authentic, to take the real me out into the wider world. Empowering, very much in the same way. So it's empowered me to be more confident in myself, be understanding and supportive of myself. And freeing as well. Massively freeing. Just again, that authenticity, feeling that space to show up as I am without needing to mask, without needing to perform. You created that space for me very early on. You made it. Subconsciously, we didn't have that explicit conversation to say this is a safe space, and I wouldn't have wanted that, but it naturally felt very psychologically safe for me that I've shown up, in the way that I've really wanted to for a long time in any space, and I think it's allowed me to replicate that in my own home, in my own personal relationships, in the workplace with people that I manage as well. Just amazing, really.
Beautiful. I really hear that and appreciate that, and appreciate you. And I feel like that's the biggest compliment you can give someone, is just to say that you make them, that you felt psychologically safe, and that really is my goal. So thank you so much. Really, and I really mean this. It's a privilege. It's a privilege. It's a collaborative space, and it's a privilege to me to work alongside you and to be a mirror for those 3 months. So thank you so much, Jess, and thank you for your time as well today. And we'll see each other again.
Yes, and thank you for supporting me on this journey. It wasn't a journey that you led or that you took me on by any stretch. It was something that, as you say, we co-collaborated on, and we really worked well together. And I'm so pleased that kind of I found you and we started this, because it's hard to imagine where I was and where I'd be now without it. But gosh, knowing where I'll get to with this is immense. So yes, thank you.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you, Jess. I'll end the session now. And just to say, we're creating an online group coaching thing called community, called Somatic Embodied Leadership. And I know you're going to be on that call. And for anyone who listens to this, you can find the details on the website. The idea is really about creating community for highly sensitive women and women in leadership, and create a collaborative space where we're supporting each other. There's amazing people in this community. And so we'll still continue to see each other in a different way. It won't be one-to-one, but it'll be in a beautiful community. And my intention is, going forward, I want to have 3 retreats a year, one in England, one in Spain, and one in Peru. So they'll be in person, but we'll start with the online community and see where it grows, what happens. So watch this space. Thanks, Jess.